Lira Vance ran a finger over the holographic blueprint, pausing for a moment to adjust the thin, almost invisible spectacles that helped her see energy flows. Her workshop, located in the heart of the Xylos Planet Hub, was no stuffy garage. It was a sphere of transparent biopolymer, floating high above the merchant quarters, filled with the quiet hum and soft glow of hundreds of different devices. Here, far from Earth and human bureaucracy, Lira had found her calling, techno-weaver. She didn't just fix tech, she wove it, creating impossible connections between the technologies of different species. Her slender but wiry frame was in constant motion among the tool racks, her long black hair tied back in a messy bun. She had come to Xylos 5 years ago, when her research group was disbanded. Lira chose not to return to overpopulated Earth, settling here instead, where her skills were seen as both valuable and a little mysterious to the alien populace. Her workshop had no room for grease and grime, only for polish and cleanliness. A soft chime announced the arrival of a visitor, and Lira looked up. Standing at the entrance was a small creature. Since she had first appeared 6 months ago, Lira knew this was no ordinary client. The creature's skin was a bright, tangerine color, shimmering as if carved from pure crystal. It was a Kaelian. She stood barely a meter tall, her body composed of perfectly smooth, glowing crystals that caught the light, creating mesmerizing patterns. Her large, insect-like curious eyes watched Lyra's every move. "Oh, you're here again, little one?" Lira asked softly. "Come and watch me fix someone else's mistakes." The crystal child nodded energetically, taking a step inside. Lira never knew her name, only that she had appeared suddenly one day and had since become a regular visitor. She assumed the girl was from one of the aristocratic houses living in the gleaming spires above the city, but she never asked. "Well, come on in. Just don't touch anything," Lira said, gesturing to a small, floating stool she kept ready for her. The child hopped onto the stool, her movements so graceful it seemed she was weightless. Her crystal skin glowed from within, and she wore a simple silver tunic that shimmered in the light. "Want to see something cool?" Lira asked, holding up a device that looked like a tangled mess of wires and curved crystals. With a press of a hidden button, she unfolded it, and it snapped into the shape of a perfect hexagon that pulsed with a soft blue light. "It's a puzzle from the planet Kaelian. They use them to teach their kids spatial reasoning." The girl's eyes widened in delight, and she reached out to take it, but then pulled her hand back, remembering Lyra's rules. "It's okay." Lira gently placed it in her tiny palm. "This one you can touch." As the child turned the puzzle over in her hands, Lira returned to her work, glancing over from time to make sure she was all right. Her quiet presence made Lyra's solitary days more bearable. She was never one for small talk, but when the girl was around, she felt the need to narrate her work. "See, the trick with these communicators is that they are designed for beings with 6 fingers," Lira explained, pointing to the internal components. "But if you bypass this circuit and reroute the signal through a secondary node, you can get it to work even if you only have 5. The girl nodded as if she understood every word, her attention completely focused on Lira. Lira couldn't help but smile. Most locals regarded her with a mixture of respect and wariness. Humans were still a relative rarity this far from Earth. But this child showed no fear, only curiosity. As the day wore on, Lira finished repairing the communicator and moved on to modifying a standard hover scooter for a client from the planet Kaelian, whose build made operating a stock scooter impossible. "Hand me that crystal cutter, would you?" she asked, pointing to the tool on the bench near the girl. She hopped off the stool and carefully retrieved the tool, bringing it to Lira with a serious expression that made her chuckle. "Thanks, my assistant." Lira winked at her, and for the first time, she was rewarded with a shy smile that transformed her delicate features. When the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the workshop floor, the girl slid off her stool and headed for the door. "Heading home?" Lira asked, putting down her tools. "Will you be here tomorrow at the same time?" She nodded, her crystal skin catching the last rays of the setting sun, and she disappeared around the corner. Lira stretched, feeling a satisfying pop in her spine after the long hours of hunched-over work. She never questioned why such a young child was on her own, or why she spent hours watching a human mechanic instead of playing with others of her kind. On this frontier planet, different species had their own customs, and she had long learned not to impose human expectations on alien cultures. But when 3 days passed and her little visitor was nowhere to be found, Lira started to worry. She found herself glancing toward the door more and more, expecting to see her small silhouette against the sunlight. By the 4th day, a knot of unease had settled in her stomach. She's probably just busy, she told herself, as she locked up the workshop that evening. Or her family went on a trip. But something felt off, and Lira Vance had learned to trust her instincts. By the 5th day, with the little alien girl still a no-show, Lira's worry had morphed into resolve. After locking up her workshop early, she changed into the cleanest clothes she owned. A simple blue shirt and dark pants that had seen better days, but at least weren't stained with machine grease. The Kaelian quarter was just beyond the commercial district. Its architecture contrasted sharply with the utilitarian buildings that dominated the rest of the settlement. Elegant structures with sweeping curves and iridescent surfaces caught the late daylight, casting prismatic patterns on the polished walkways. Lira felt distinctly out of place as she entered the quarter, her heavy boots echoing on the smooth stone paths. Humans rarely ventured into this part of the settlement. It wasn't forbidden, but the unwritten boundaries between species were generally observed. Lira felt the curious stares of the Kaelians as she walked by. Their crystal skin and graceful movements marked them as clearly as her human appearance marked her. "Excuse me," she said, approaching a Kaelian who was tending to a garden of bioluminescent plants. "I'm looking for a little girl about this tall." She held her hand up to her waist. "She has orange crystal skin, and sometimes she visits my workshop." The Kaelian straightened, his expression unreadable to a human. Why would a human be looking for a Kaelian child? His voice was like music. "She's been coming to my workshop for months," Lira explained, trying to keep frustration out of her voice. "She hasn't been around for almost a week. I'm worried." The Kaelian's pointed ears twitched slightly, a sign of discomfort, as Lira had learned from her limited interactions with the species. "Many families live here," the Kaelian said finally. "I cannot help you." Lira thanked him all the same and continued moving deeper into the quarter. Similar conversations with other Kaelians yielded equally unhelpful responses, from polite refusal to barely hidden suspicion. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows between the elegant buildings, Lira was about to admit defeat. That's when she overheard 2 Kaelian women talking as they walked ahead of her. "Poor little Kaelia," one was saying. "Such a tragedy for one so young." "House Lumina has endured so much," the other replied. "First Lord Lumina's son in the border conflict, and now his granddaughter's accident." Lira slowed her pace, staying just close enough to hear without looking like she was eavesdropping. "I hear she was playing near the old crystalline conduits," the first continued. "A surge damaged her neural centers. The healers say the damage is irreversible. To lose her sight so young," the second said somberly. "Lady Eldera must be devastated." Lyra's heart sank. It had to be her little visitor, blind. The thought of those curious, bright eyes being forever dimmed made her heart ache. She approached the pair, clearing her throat. "Excuse me," she said, trying to sound as unthreatening as possible. "I couldn't help but overhear. This girl, Kaelia, does she have a habit of visiting the commercial district?" The 2 Kaelian women exchanged glances, their expressions shifting from surprise to wariness. "Why would human be asking about the affairs of House Lumina?" one asked, her tone cold. "I believe I know her," Lira said simply. "She visits my workshop." "I was worried." The taller of the 2 Kaelians studied her for a moment. "You are the techno-weaver," she said finally. "The one who creates the impossible." Lira nodded, surprised to be recognized. "Kaelia spoke of you," she admitted. "She finds your human methods fascinating." "Is she all right?" Lira asked, the worry evident in her voice. The Kaelians exchanged glances again. "She lives," the tall one said. but her internal light has gone out. For Kaelian, this is a difficult thing. Our kind relies heavily on crystalline resonance. Without it, she's cut off from much of our culture, our methods of learning. Lira processed the information, her mind already working feverishly. Where can I find her? You said House Lumina. The estate is in the northern part of the quarter, the shorter Kaelian replied, pointing toward a rise where a particularly grand structure dominated the skyline. But they would never admit a human, especially now. Lira thanked them and turned back toward her workshop, her stride purposeful. She wasn't going to try to sneak into a noble's house, but she did have an idea that would require all of her skill and several sleepless nights. Back in her workshop, Lira pulled out her collection of salvaged tech and began sketching designs on her tablet. If Kaelians process information differently than humans, perhaps their neural pathways could be bypassed entirely. She had worked on sensory enhancement devices before, but never for a species with such complex crystalline pathways. "Hang in there, little one," she murmured as she started to assemble the first prototype. "Lyra's going to fix it." For 3 days, she barely slept, sustained by caffeine and determination. She used her contacts throughout the settlement, trading favors for specialized components she couldn't fabricate herself. By the 4th day, she had created a sleek, crystalline device that would fit over the top of her face. She had designed it to be adjustable, knowing she would grow. "This is a special kind of seeing tool," she explained when she came back. "It won't work the way your eyes do, but it can help you find your way around the world again." Eldera stepped forward, her posture tense. "What is this device?" "Our healers have already determined that the damage is irreparable." "I'm not trying to fix her neural centers," Lira explained, holding up the device. "This bypasses them completely. It translates other inputs, thermal signatures, sound reflections, electromagnetic fields, into neural signals that her brain can interpret as spatial awareness." Eldera's expression shifted from suspicion to curiosity. "Such a technology exists?" "Not exactly," Lira admitted. "I assembled this from various components and some theories I've been working on. It's a prototype." "You created this for Kaelia?" Eldera asked, her tone softening slightly. "Of course," Lira replied, as if it was the most natural thing in the world. "She's my friend." Kaelia squeezed her hand. Her face turned to her with expectation. "Can I try it, Lira?" "If your guardian will allow it, of course," Lira said, looking to Eldera, who hesitated, then gave a sharp nod. "Proceed, but I will be watching closely." Lira knelt before Kaelia and carefully placed the device over her eyes. It fit snugly, conforming to her crystal features. She made a few quick adjustments, then attached a small power crystal to the back. "Okay, little one, I'm going to turn it on now. It might feel strange at first, and the images won't be what you're used to, more like patterns and shapes, but your brain will learn to interpret them better over time." Kaelia nodded solemnly, her small hands clutching Lyra's forearms. Lira activated the device. For a moment, nothing happened. Then Kaelia gasped, her fingers digging into Lyra's skin. I can see something," she exclaimed. "It's different, like shadows and light, but I can tell where things are." She slowly turned her head, surveying the workshop. "That's your big table with all the tools," she said, pointing. "And that's the stool where I sit." Lira felt a lump in her throat. "That's right," she managed to say. "What about me? Can you see me?" Kaelia reached out, her small hand finding Lyra's face with surprising accuracy. "You're warm," she said. "Warmer than the other things, and you create a shape, like a human, but bigger and different from Eldera." Lira laughed, fighting back some unwelcome moisture in her eyes. "That's right. Humans are a little warmer than Kaelians." Kaelia took a hesitant step, then another, navigating around a toolbox on the floor without assistance. "I can walk by myself again," she said, a sense of wonder in her voice. Eldera watched with unconcealed amazement. "This is remarkable," she admitted. "Our healers said nothing could be done." "Your healers were thinking like Kaelians," Lira said gently. "Sometimes it takes an outside perspective to find a different solution." Kaelia made her way to her customary stool and climbed onto it, surveying the workshop with her new sense of sight. Everything looks different, but I can still tell what it is, she said. Thank you, Lira. The pure joy in her voice was worth all the sleepless nights. Lira smiled, forgetting her fatigue for a moment. The device will require adjustments as she grows, she told Eldera, and likely upgrades as I refine the technology, but it should give her back her independence. Eldera nodded slowly. House Lumina is indebted to you, human. This is unexpected. I didn't do it for House Lumina, Lira said simply. I did it for her. While Kaelian explored the workshop with her new sense of sight, Eldera moved closer to Lira, lowering her voice. You must know that what you have done will not go unnoticed. Lord Lumina will want to recognize this service. Something in Eldera's tone made Lira feel uneasy, but she pushed the feeling away. Right now, watching Kaelian navigate her world again was all that mattered. 4 days later, after Kaelian's visit, Lira was deep within the guts of a malfunctioning atmospheric regulator when her workshop door hissed open with a discreet whoosh. She looked up, expecting her usual customer, but instead saw 4 Kaelian warriors in gleaming armor standing before her. These were no common guards. Their armor, an iridescent plating that shifted colors with every movement, marked them as elite honor guards of a noble house. Each carried a ceremonial staff that Lira knew could be morphed into a deadly energy weapon with a simple neural command. Lira Vance, the lead warrior, stated, his voice resonant and formal. Your presence is required at House Lumina. Lira slowly put down her tools and straightened up. Is this about Kaelian? Is she all right? The soldiers exchanged glances, their expressions unreadable behind their semi-transparent face shields. The child is well, the leader replied. Beyond that, we are not at liberty to discuss. You will come with us now. It was not a request. Lira slowly wiped her hands on a rag, her mind racing. She had heard stories of humans who ran afoul of Kaelian nobility. Most ended with the humans disappearing, never to be seen again. Had she violated some cultural taboo by giving Kaelian the device? Had she created some insult she was unaware of? Give me a moment to clean myself up, she said, trying to keep her voice steady. I can't possibly show up at a noble house like this. The lead honor guard gave a slight tilt of his head. You have 5 minutes. Lira quickly washed her hands and face in the small washroom at the back of her workshop, changing into her cleanest shirt, a dark blue one with the fewest stains. She thought about grabbing the small pulse pistol she kept hidden under her workbench, but then thought better of it. If House Lumina wanted her dead, one weapon wouldn't help against 4 elite guards. When she emerged, the soldiers had arranged themselves in a square around her, one in front, one behind, and one on each side. They led her through the commercial district, drawing curious stares from the various species that populated the settlement. Lira felt her face flush with embarrassment. Being escorted by a noble house's guards was like being paraded through the city in shackles. Is there any chance you could tell me what this is about? She asked the guard to her right, who seemed a little less rigid than the others. Lord Lumina will explain, was the dry reply. They entered the Kaelian quarter, moving down the wide, elegant boulevards toward the impressive estate Lira had seen days ago. Up close, the Lumina Manor was even more breathtaking. A towering structure of gleaming white crystal and transparent materials that caught and refracted light in mesmerizing patterns. The guards led her through the intricately carved gates and across the grounds, filled with exotic flora that seemed to react to their presence, turning and swaying as they passed. Lira might have found it beautiful if she wasn't so preoccupied with whether she would ever make it out of here alive. Inside, the manor opened into a massive atrium where water flowed in impossible patterns, defying gravity as it spiraled upward in luminescent streams. The air smelled of unfamiliar spices and something like honey, but sharper. Wait here, the lead guard commanded, leaving Lira in the center of the atrium, while the soldiers took positions in each corner. Lira stood awkwardly, trying not to fidget. The minutes stretched into what felt like an hour before a side door opened and an aged Kaelian entered. His skin was a deeper, almost indigo shade than most, and his silver hair was intricately coiffed. He wore formal robes that shimmered with embedded light patterns, a sign of a house patriarch. "So," the elder said, studying Lira with piercing eyes, "you are the human who gave my granddaughter back her light." Lira swallowed hard. "Lord Lumina, I presume. I am Lira Vance, and I didn't exactly give her back her light. I just created a tool to help her navigate without it." Lord Lumina slowly circled her, like a predator assessing its prey. A distinction without a difference to a child who thought her world was forever dimmed. There was none of the warmth in his voice that Lira had heard from other Kaelians. "You created this device in 4 days, using salvaged parts and theoretical science." "I'm good with my hands," Lira said with a shrug, but then instantly regretted her gesture as the honor guards tensed. "Indeed." Lord Lumina stopped directly in front of her. "Are you aware of the penalty for interfering in the affairs of a noble house without permission?" Lyra's mouth went dry. "No, sir." "Death," Lord Lumina said simply. "Or worse, depending on the nature of the interference." Lyra's heart hammered against her ribs. "I didn't mean to interfere. I just wanted to help Kaelia." "And yet, you did interfere," the elder continued. "You provided medical treatment to a noble child without consulting our healers. You introduced untested technology to a member of House Lumina. You crossed boundaries that have existed between our species since the first human settlers arrived on this world." Each accusation was like another nail in Lyra's coffin. She straightened, deciding that if she was going to die, she would do so with dignity. "With all due respect, Lord Lumina, I would do it again. That little girl deserved a chance to see the world, regardless of politics or boundaries." A tense silence followed her words. The honor guards shifted, their hands tightening on their staffs. Then, unexpectedly, Lord Lumina's stern expression broke into something that resembled surprise. "Remarkable," he said. "You humans never cease to amaze me with your audacity." Before Lira could process the shift, another door opened. A small figure bounded out, moving with surprising speed and confidence. "Grandfather, you promised you wouldn't scare her." Kaelia's voice rang out as she ran straight to Lira, navigating the room perfectly with her device, and wrapped her arms around her waist. Lira instinctively put a protective arm on her shoulder, confusion warring with relief. "I was merely testing her character, little one," Lord Luminous said, his voice softening. "A human who cowers when faced with consequences is not worthy of our gratitude." "Gratitude?" Lira repeated, looking at Kaelia, who was beaming up at her through her device. Of course, a new voice, melodic and rich, rang out from the same door Kaelia had entered. "Did you think we would punish you for returning our most precious crystal to the light?" Lira looked up and felt her breath catch. A Kaelian woman stood in the doorway, tall and graceful, with features that combined strength and delicacy in perfect harmony. Her crystal hair flowed down her back like liquid silver, and she wore a dress the color of the night sky that accentuated every curve of her form. But it was her eyes that captured her, large, luminous, and fixed on her with an intensity that made her pulse quicken. "Lira Vance," Lord Lumina said solemnly. "Allow me to introduce my daughter, Lady Eldera of House Lumina, Kaelia's mother, and the one who insisted we bring you here tonight. A celebration will be held in your honor this evening," Lord Lumina announced, his previous severity replaced with formal courtesy. "House Lumina acknowledges its debt to you, Lira Vance." Lira shifted awkwardly, acutely aware of Lady Eldera's gaze still fixed on her. "That's really not necessary, sir. I was just helping a friend. Kaelian customs require it," Lady Eldera said, her voice like music. She walked over, each step a graceful and deliberate motion. To refuse would cause a greater offense than any you could have imagined previously. Up close, Lira could see the delicate patterns on her skin, almost like constellations on a crystalline background. Her eyes, she realized, were not a solid color like most Kaelians, but flecked with silver. "Then it would be my honor," she managed to say, trying not to stare. Kaelia tugged on her hand. "You'll sit with me at the feast, Lira. The human will need a fitting garment," Lord Lumina interjected before Lira could answer. "And an education in our customs as well." Lady Eldera smiled, a subtle curve of her lips that caused an unexpected warmth in Lyra's chest. I will personally see to our guests' preparations. Lord Lumina raised a brow but nodded. Very well, the celebration will begin at moonrise. With that, he departed, the guards following him. Kaelia bounced excitedly. You'll love our feasts. There will be music and dancing and so much food. That sounds wonderful, Lyra said, smiling genuinely at her enthusiasm. The device seemed to be working perfectly. She navigated the room with confidence. The device was now decorated with a fine silver filigree that matched the Kaelian aesthetic. Kaelia, darling, Lady Eldora said softly, go with Aerie to prepare for tonight. I need to speak with Lyra about the feast. A female servant appeared, and Kaelia reluctantly let go of Lyra's hand. Promise you won't leave before the feast? Promise. I promise, Lyra assured her. When Kaelia had left, a subtle tension filled the air between Lyra and Lady Eldora. She gestured toward a side room. Walk with me. The corridor they entered was lined with living plants that gave off a soft glow, illuminating their path with a gentle radiance that complemented Lady Eldora's features perfectly. I must thank you properly, she said after a moment of silence. For what you did for my daughter, there are no words sufficient in any of our languages. Anyone would have done the same, Lyra replied. Lady Eldora stopped, turning to face her. No, they would not have. Our own healers declared her condition hopeless. Our technology could not help her. Yet you, a human with limited resources, accomplished what our entire medical establishment could not. Something in her gaze, an admiration mixed with curiosity, made Lyra's pulse quicken. Humans have a different way of looking at problems, she said. Sometimes that's an advantage. Indeed, she began to walk again, leading her into a room filled with flowing water and comfortable seating. Please sit. We have much to discuss before tonight. Lyra sat down across from her, trying to maintain a respectful distance despite the pull she felt toward her. Kaelian feasts follow strict protocols, she explained. As our guest of honor, certain actions will be expected of you. Others will be considered inappropriate. I'll do my best not to embarrass or offend anyone, Lyra promised. Lady Eldora's lips curved again. Another refreshing human trait, the directness and communication. Kaelians often speak in layers of meaning. She leaned forward slightly. May I ask you something personal, Lira Vance? Of course. Why did you help Kaelia? The true reason. You had no obligation to our house, no connection, other than a child's visits to your workshop. Lyra considered the question. Where I come from, on Earth, we have a saying, it takes a village to raise a child. It means that everyone in a society has a responsibility to the children in it, not just their parents. A communal approach to child-rearing, Eldora mused. Fascinating. Kaelians are very protective of our young, rarely allowing outside influence. And yet, Kaelia was allowed to visit me, Lyra pointed out. Eldora's expression softened. My daughter has always been strong-willed. After her father was lost in a border conflict, she became even more determined to explore the world beyond our traditions. I decided not to restrict her further, as long as she was safe. I'm sorry about your husband, Lyra said, her sympathy genuine. That was 3 years ago, she replied. By Kaelian custom, the mourning period has ended. Her eyes met Lyra's with an intensity that left no doubt as to her meaning. Lyra felt a flush of heat rise to her face. Eldora, she interjected, when we are alone, you may call me Eldora. The air between them seemed to crackle with electricity. Lyra was acutely aware of her proximity, the subtle scent that surrounded her. Something like sandalwood, but wilder. Eldora, she said, tasting the name. It felt right on her tongue. I'm honored by your trust, but I don't want to misunderstand or overstep. She smiled more openly. Another refreshing human trait is your directness and communication. Kaelians often speak in layers of meaning. She rose gracefully. Come, we must prepare you for tonight. The next hours passed in a whirlwind of activity. Lyra was measured for formal attire, instructed in basic Kaelian etiquette, and given a crash course in the house's history. Throughout it all, Eldora remained close, her guidance punctuated by lingering touches and glances that spoke volumes. By the time moonrise approached, Lira stood before a mirror in guest quarters more luxurious than any place she had ever stayed. Her reflection showed a transformed woman, dressed in Kaelian formal wear that had been modified to accommodate her human physique. The deep blue fabric complemented her light hair, while subtle silver accents echoed House Lumina's colors. A soft chime announced Eldera's arrival. She entered, now dressed in a gown that shimmered like captured starlight, her crystal hair adorned with delicate silver ornaments. "You look," Lira began, words failing her. "As do you," she replied, her eyes traveling appreciatively over her form. She approached, adjusting the collar of her attire. Her fingers brushed against her neck, sending a current of awareness through her. "Tonight will be challenging," she said softly. "Many eyes will be upon us, watching for any sign of impropriety." "Us?" Lira questioned. Eldera's smile held secrets. "My father is not blind to the energy between us, nor are others in our house." Her hand remained at her collar. "Attraction between species is not forbidden, merely uncommon." Lira swallowed hard. "And is that what this is? Attraction? What else would you call it?" she asked, her voice dropping to a whisper as she leaned closer. "This pull that defies logic or propriety." Their faces were inches apart now, the air between them charged with possibility. "In human custom," Lira said hoarsely, "this would be the moment where I might kiss you." "Then perhaps," she murmured, "we should honor human custom as well as Kaelian tonight." Their lips met tentatively at first, then with growing certainty. The sensation was electric, familiar yet alien. Her skin was slightly cooler than a human's, but no less responsive. When they finally parted, both were breathing faster. "We should join the others," Eldera said, though she made no move to step away. "Yes," Lira agreed, equally reluctant. "We should." With visible effort, they separated, composing themselves for the public eye. But as they left the chamber together, Lira knew with absolute certainty that the night ahead would change everything. The grand hall of House Lumina pulsed with light and music as Lira entered. With Eldera at her side, hundreds of Kaelians turned to observe them, their expressions ranging from curiosity to barely concealed disdain. Lira straightened her shoulders, determined not to embarrass Eldera or her family. "Remember," she whispered, "speak only when addressed directly and accept all gifts with both hands." Lira nodded, her attention caught by the elaborate decorations, living plants that changed colors in rhythm with the music and floating orbs of light that drifted through the air like luminescent jellyfish. Lord Lumina stood at the center of the hall, Kaelia at his side. The child wore an ornate silver dress, and her device, now beautifully integrated into a delicate headpiece that made it look like a deliberate fashion choice rather than an assisted device. "Lira," Kaelia called out, waving enthusiastically. Several nearby nobles raised eyebrows at her informal greeting. As they approached, Lord Lumina raised his hand, and the music faded. The assembled guests fell silent. Tonight, the elder Kaelian's voice resonated through the hall. "We honor an outsider who has proven herself worthy of our highest esteem. Lira Vance of Earth has returned light to the darkness, hope to despair, and joy to House Lumina." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Lira felt Eldera's hand brush against hers, a subtle gesture of support. "Therefore," Lord Lumina continued, "by the ancient right of debt and honor, I name Lira Vance as Lumina Ven, friend of the house with all privileges and protections therein." A collective gasp rose from the assembly. Eldera's fingers now gripped Lira's tightly. "This is unprecedented," she whispered. "No human has ever been granted such status." Before Lira could respond, Lord Lumina beckoned her forward. Lira approached and knelt as Eldera had instructed her earlier, head bowed. The elder placed a hand on Lira's head. "Rise, Lumina Ven, and receive the mark of your station." Lira stood as a servant approached with a small box. From it, Lord Lumina removed a pendant, a teardrop-shaped crystal that caught the light in hypnotic patterns. This crystal contains the essence of our house, Lord Lumina explained as he placed it around Lyra's neck. It marks you as under our protection and grants you access to our domains. I am honored beyond words, Lyra said, the formal phrase Eldra had taught her. The crowd's reaction was mixed. Some applauded politely. Others whispered among themselves with obvious disapproval. One Kaelian male in particular, standing near the front, watched with naked contempt. "That is Lord Zoran of House Umbra," Eldra murmured following Lyra's gaze. "Our houses have been rivals for generations. He will not be pleased by your elevation." The formal ceremony complete, the celebration resumed. Lyra found herself surrounded by curious Kaelians, some genuinely interested in her work, others clearly assessing the human who had somehow gained favor with House Lumina. Hours later, after navigating a maze of alien social customs and unfamiliar foods, Lyra finally found a moment alone with Eldra on a secluded balcony overlooking gardens that glowed with bioluminescent flora. "You've handled yourself admirably," she said, standing close enough that her arm brushed against hers. "Many expected you to falter." "I had an excellent teacher," Lyra replied, turning to face her. In the soft light, her beauty was almost painful to behold. "The night is not yet over," she said, her voice dropping to a sultry tone. "There are private customs that follow such celebrations." Lyra's pulse quickened. "I'd be very interested in learning those customs." Eldra stepped closer, her body now pressed against hers. "I've never been with a human," she admitted, "but I find myself intensely curious." Their lips met in a kiss far less restrained than their earlier one. Lyra's hands found her waist, pulling her closer as her fingers tangled in her hair. The differences in their physiology seemed to heighten every sensation. Her skin cooler, but incredibly responsive to her touch, her scent intoxicating in its alien sweetness. "My chambers are not far," she whispered against her lips. A discreet cough interrupted them. They turned to find Vaughn the steward standing at the balcony entrance. "Forgive the intrusion, Lady Eldra," he said, his expression grave. "There is an urgent matter requiring immediate attention." Eldra sighed reluctantly, stepping back from Lyra. "What is it, Vaughn?" "It's the young mistress," Vaughn said. "Her device has been taken, and we cannot locate her." Lyra's blood ran cold. "Kaelia is missing. She was last seen retiring to her chambers after the formal presentation," Vaughn explained. "When her attendant checked on her an hour ago, both she and the device were gone." Eldra's face drained of color. "Alert the guards. Search every corner of the estate." "Already done, my lady. Lord Lumina has requested your presence, and that of Lira Vance in the security chamber immediately." They followed Vaughn through corridors now eerily quiet compared to the ongoing celebration in the main hall. Lord Lumina stood before a wall of holographic displays showing various parts of the estate. "Someone has breached our security," he said without preamble. The sensors detected a transport signature consistent with House Umbra technology in the East Garden 10 minutes ago. "Zoran," Eldra hissed. "He would dare." "We have no proof," Lord Lumina cautioned, though his expression suggested he shared her suspicion. "Why take Kaelia?" Lyra asked. "If they wanted the device technology, they could have tried to take me." An incoming communication interrupted them. The central display flickered and Lord Zoran's face appeared, his expression smug. "Lumina," he greeted coldly, "I trust your celebration continues without incident." "Return my granddaughter immediately, Zoran," Lord Lumina demanded, "or face the consequences." Zoran's smile widened. "I'm afraid I don't know what you're talking about. However, I am most interested in examining the human's remarkable device. Such technology could be valuable to the right parties." "If you harm her," Eldra began, her voice shaking with rage. "The child is unharmed," Zoran interrupted. "For now, but we require the human to provide certain technical specifications. Bring her to the old boundary marker within the hour alone, or I cannot guarantee the child's continued well-being." The transmission ended abruptly. "I'll go," Lyra said immediately, "but I'll need equipment for my workshop." "It's a trap," Eldra said, gripping her arm. "Zoran has no intention of releasing Kaelia. Once he has what he wants from you, he'll eliminate both of you." Lira covered her hand with hers. I know, but I have a few human tricks that might surprise him. Lord Lumina studied Lira thoughtfully. Perhaps it is time we learned why humans have thrived on 100 worlds despite all odds. He turned to a guard. Escort Lumina Vin to her workshop and back. Provide whatever assistance she requires. As Lira prepared to leave, Eldera pulled her aside. Return to me, she whispered fiercely. What we began tonight, I would see it completed. Lira cupped her face gently. Count on it. No alien kidnapper is going to keep me from finding out where this leads. Their kiss was brief, but filled with promise, and the unspoken understanding that they had crossed a threshold from which neither wished to return. Lira worked with focused intensity in her workshop, the honor guard watching with barely concealed curiosity as she modified several seemingly unrelated devices. The formal attire she had worn to the celebration now lay discarded on a workbench, replaced by her familiar mechanic's uniform. Your species has an unusual approach to technology, the guard observed as Lira connected a power cell to what appeared to be a simple scanning tool. Humans adapt, Lira replied without looking up. We make do with what we have. It's how we've survived. Within 30 minutes, she had assembled 3 devices. A modified scanner, a small metallic sphere, and what looked like an ordinary repair tool, but with several non-standard modifications. Let's go, she said, securing the items in various pockets. And I need to go alone, just as Zoran demanded. The guard frowned. Lady Eldera instructed me not to leave your side. Lira smiled grimly. Tell her I'm following the plan. She'll understand. The boundary marker, an ancient stone pillar inscribed with symbols from both House Lumina and House Umbra, stood in a clearing at the edge of dense forest. Lira approached alone, her senses heightened by adrenaline and the weight of responsibility. Kaelia's life depended on her outsmarting creatures whose technology and culture were far more advanced than her own. Lord Zoran emerged from the shadows, flanked by 2 guards. Behind them, a 3rd guard held Kaelia, her device removed, her expression frightened but defiant. Lira, she called out. I knew you'd come. Silence, child. Zoran snapped before turning his attention to Lira. The human arrives as instructed. How refreshingly obedient. Let her go, Lira said, her voice steady despite the rage building inside her. This is between us. Zoran laughed, the sound lacking any warmth. I think not. First, you'll provide the specifications for your remarkable device. Then, perhaps we can discuss the child's release. Lira reached slowly into her pocket, retrieving a small data crystal. Everything you need to know about the device is here. Take it and let Kaelia go. Zoran gestured, and one of his guards approached to take the crystal. As the guard reached for it, Lira deliberately fumbled, dropping it to the ground. Sorry, she muttered, bending to retrieve it. As she straightened, she pressed a hidden button on the scanner in her other pocket. The effect was immediate. Every power device in a 10-meter radius, including the Umbra Guard's armor systems and weapons, flickered and went dead. What is this? Zoran demanded as his personal shield generator failed. EMP pulse, Lira explained, already moving. Crude but effective. In the moment of confusion, Lira tossed the metallic sphere toward the guard holding Kaelia. It burst open, releasing a cloud of dense smoke that obscured vision, but crucially wouldn't interfere with the thermal sensors Lira had built in her modified repair tool. Through the smoke, Lira could clearly see the heat signatures of the Umbra. She darted forward, using her military training to disable the guard holding Kaelia with a precise strike to a vulnerable joint in the alien's armor. Scooping up the child, she pressed the device, which she had kept safe in an EMP-shielded pocket, back onto her face. Hold tight, she whispered as she wrapped her arms around her neck. Stop her, Zoran shouted, but his guard were still struggling with their malfunctioning equipment. Lira sprinted for the trilene. Her human physiology evolved on a higher gravity world, giving her an advantage in raw speed and strength that the Kaelians couldn't match. Behind her, she heard Zoran's furious orders and the sound of pursuit. But she had planned for this. Reaching the forest, Lira activated the 3rd device, a simple transmitter that sent a prearranged signal. Moments later, The quiet hum of a Lumina transport craft broke the silence as it descended into a small clearing ahead. The craft's side door slid open to reveal Eldora, her elegant gown replaced by practical attire, a determined expression on her face. "Hurry," she called, extending her hand. Lira passed Kaelian to her before turning to face their pursuers one last time. The Umbra guards had emerged from the smoke, their systems partially recovered, weapons raised. "This isn't over, human," Zoran shouted. "Actually," came a commanding voice from the transport. "It is." Lord Lumina stepped into view, flanked by 4 elite Lumina guards. "Your actions constitute a direct violation of the Treaty of Houses, Zoran, kidnapping a noble child. The High Council will strip your house of rank for this transgression." Zoran's face contorted with rage. "You have no proof." "Don't I?" Lord Lumina gestured, and a small drone emerged from the forest canopy. "We've recorded everything. Your house is finished." Realizing he was cornered, Zoran made a desperate lunge toward Lira, drawing a concealed blade. Lira sidestepped with practiced ease, using the alien's momentum against him. With a simple twist, she disarmed Zoran and pinned him to the ground. "That," Lira said calmly, "was a mistake." Within minutes, the Umbra contingent was subdued and secured. As the transport lifted off, Kaelian clung to Lira, her device once again functioning perfectly. "You saved me," she said simply, "just like in the stories humans tell." Lira smiled, ruffling her hair. "That's what friends do, kiddo." Lord Lumina approached, his expression solemn. "Once again, House Lumina finds itself in your debt, Lira Vance. Your methods were unorthodox, but undeniably effective. Humans have always had to rely on ingenuity rather than advanced technology," Lira explained. "Sometimes the simplest solution is the one your enemy least expects." Eldora hadn't left Lira's side since they returned to the transport. Now, as her father moved away to communicate with the Kaelian authorities, she leaned close. "You could have been killed," she whispered, her fingers intertwining with hers. "But I wasn't," she replied, squeezing her hand. "Takes more than a few angry aliens to stop a determined human." Her eyes searched Lira's face. "And what are you determined to do now, Lira Vance?" The intensity of her gaze left no doubt about her meaning. Lira felt her pulse quicken as she remembered their interrupted moment on the balcony. "I believe," she said softly, "we had something important to finish." 3 months later, Lira stood on the balcony of what was now her permanent residence within the Lumina estate. The workshop Lord Lumina had provided her was 3 times the size of her old garage, equipped with technology she could only have dreamed of before. But the true treasure was the woman who now shared her life. Eldora approached from behind, wrapping her arms around her waist and pressing against her back. "What are you thinking about?" she asked, her voice a pleasant melody in her ear. "How a simple repair job for a curious kid changed everything," she replied, turning to face her. Their relationship had scandalized some in Kaelian society. But with House Lumina's support, and after Lira's role in exposing House Umbra's numerous violations of interspecies treaties, opposition had gradually faded. The announcement of their formal union schedule for the following month had been met with more curiosity than outrage. "Kaelian is waiting for you," Eldora said. "She wants to show you her latest modifications to the device." Lira laughed. "She's going to be a better engineer than me before she's 10. She has an excellent teacher," Eldora replied, rising on her toes to kiss her. The kiss deepened, igniting the now familiar fire between them. Their physical relationship had required patience and discovery on both sides, but the results had been worth every moment of careful exploration. What they shared transcended species, a connection neither had expected, but both now treasured. Later that night, as Eldora lay nestled against her in the darkness, her skin cool against her warmth, Lira reflected on the strange path that had led her here. From a solitary mechanic to a member of a noble alien house. From fixing broken machines to mending a child's lost sense and finding unexpected love. "I can hear you thinking," Eldora murmured sleepily. "Just wondering what other adventures await us," she replied, stroking her crystal hair. She propped herself up on one elbow, her silver-flecked eyes catching the moonlight. With a human's ingenuity and a Kaelian's wisdom, I believe the possibilities are endless. Lira smiled, pulling her close. In a universe full of advanced species and ancient civilizations, it was humanity's adaptability, resourcefulness, and compassion that had carved out their place among the stars. Not through superior technology or strength, but through the uniquely human ability to see problems differently and to care deeply enough to solve them. As she drifted towards sleep with Eldera in her arms and the knowledge that Kaelia was safe and thriving, Lira knew she wouldn't trade her human heritage for all the advanced technology in the galaxy. Sometimes being human was an advantage.